y'all, this is Marley K. Hope y'all are well. This is my final review about this movie, Leave the World Behind. I know everybody's been doing a review on it, but y'all know how I am. I'm a little more intense and a little deeper than most. And so I like to be thorough in what I see for my audience because I want to try to connect the dots and keep everything linked to what we discuss on this channel, which is present truth, things that are happening, in addition to how that coincides with biblical prophecy or the Torah and the things that are going to happen in the future. So, with this movie, there are lots and lots of things that I wrote down. I have probably like 4 or 5 pages, maybe more than that if you count front and back. But I want to not delay. I want to get into it. So this movie was broken into like 4 different parts, and I didn't necessarily go through each part. Separate the parts. I just kind of um, wrote down what I saw in each section. And I'm sure I missed a lot of stuff that other people got wind of or, were able to decipher. So if you find anything that I missed, please leave it in the comment section because these types of movies I enjoy. I enjoy the layered, complex movies that have an alternate meaning or have many different meanings and symbolisms and signs because it makes you have to think critically, and I'm all for that. So the first part of this movie was I didn't even really pay attention to Julia Roberts' character and her husband when they were at home in the bed. The only thing I could think of is just the opening scene was how disrespectful the wife was to the husband. Like she was just really dismissive of him. He didn't have any control over anything. He didn't rule his house. All I could see was a lack of respect and disorder. So that's what I got from that character, period. And the husband, weak, um, not a real man, just goes with the flow and just a non-factor. He's like a third child. So one of the things that was interesting was the choices of music. Like the opening um, song for this movie was "Misled" by Kool and the Gang, and so to me, the fact that they chose that song at the beginning of the movie says to me that a lot of people, and I'm going to be bold enough to say it's not the conspiracy theorists. It's going to be the normies, the people who disregard everything we say. Those are the people who have been misled because the people who've been labeled conspiracy theorists, everything they've been talking about has been coming true. So, misled. By the time I got to the end of the movie, I listened to the song and I was thinking, wow, that's a very strange song to be playing. It's so old, but it's a very strange to play that at the beginning of the movie. And so I was thinking, by the time I got to the end of the movie, it made me think about Julia Roberts' character and her husband and how they have been misled to believe in the American dream. They were not prepared for what was happening. Everybody else had, a place in the city and a place out away from the city because they anticipated perhaps something was going to happen elsewhere. And they just wanted to be prepared. But she wasn't. But she was the most judgmental, pretentious character in the movie. So when you talk about misled, I just kind of, the takeaway is that a lot of people who believe in this fantasy of America and freedom and democracy, they've been misled and they're going to be the ones to find out. Like the prepper guy said, they've all been abandoned. We've all been abandoned. Country is sold out. There's no help coming. There's nothing. You're sitting around thinking, oh, this is coming for me, and we should be able to access this, and this should help us. No, ain't nobody coming for you, baby. You on your own. And so by the end of the movie, I understood what the misled. Oh, to me, that was my interpretation of being misled. Is that the main characters in the movie were misled, except for that little girl. The little girl, the daughter Rose, she she wasn't misled. I don't know what the significance of the Wi-Fi password being non-valid. Um, and the fact that the guy who owned the house worked in cybersecurity. I found that interesting because apparently he had inside knowledge as you go through the movie. He had some sort of inside information because of the type of work that he did. But he too was a little naive, and I guess you could consider him also misled about the uh, deviant nature of the people who he worked for and people who rule the world. Um, I looked at the man at the store who was buying the preps, and you look at what he was buying. He was buying food, water, dehydrated food, and how that woman looked at him and how he looked at her like, oh, she was stupid, and she looked at him like, oh, he was crazy. But in the end, she didn't realize that she was going to need that man, which a resounding theme throughout this movie with this particular character Julia Roberts played is like she was very judgmental. All the people that she judged, she ended up needing. She was useless. She had nothing, but she ended up having, she was judging everybody. She judged the black man who owned the house. She judged the prepper guy who had preps for he and his family. She didn't have nothing. She couldn't get back into the city. She couldn't go to her house. She didn't have anything to contribute to anybody that she was around. She was just a pain in the butt and a problem and resources because it was she and her children and her husband. Nobody had to feed them. Nobody anticipated they were going to be staying with them long term. But her attitude was an attitude of ungratefulness and arrogance and misplaced judgment. Um, One of the things I noted that we should take away from this is when the mom went in the opposite direction. I think it was some type of holiday, and everybody else was going, I guess, to the city. Mom decided to go to the countryside. And, I've been telling you, it's even in the Bible that, they're going to tell you to come to the city, and that's what they're telling you to do. All the things that they're planning are for cities, and you should be fleeing the cities and going to the countryside. And then if there's trouble in the country, you should go to the mountains. That's what the Bible tells us to do. So that is what mom was doing. She was going in the opposite direction of the crowd, and she made a note that they had the beach to themselves. And to me that was significant because that means for some reason I think that she had some type of spiritual discernment. Something was leading her to these places, but she was so angry and so caught up into this rat race, judging people, that she was unaware that she was also getting a nudge, but she wasn't answering, at least not in the way that she should have. And her daughter was always watching everything. Her daughter was a watchman, or yeah, her daughter was a watchman. That's what I would call her. Except for she was so very young, she didn't realize it, and she was so distracted because she had this technology. And so the takeaway is how technology is going to impact young people, and that is something you'll see throughout this movie. Um, they, for some reason, noted that New York has the biggest national harbor, one of the biggest national harbors on the planet. I don't know what the significance of that is, and I don't know if it has anything to do. And I'll tell you what I think it has something to do with. I'm gonna come back to that one. So when that tanker ran ashore in this movie, it was in that very harbor. That tanker had the name. It was named White Lion. So if you know anything about White Lion is the very first um, slave ship that ever brought slaves to America, to Virginia. I think it's Hampton Roads, Virginia, some part of Virginia. And so I just found it interesting that I'm sure when they built that slave ship back in the day, it was not as big as that oil tanker. And if you understand anything about captivity, the 1619 number was also in the movie. And so 1619 is the year that the first slaves arrived on the White Lion slave ship. The fact that that tanker crashed in the New York harbor, and I don't know if you've ever seen a oil tanker up close. I have, because I live really close to the port in Florida, but those things are huge. And the fact that it was called White Lion, and they mentioned this harbor is the largest, one of the largest natural harbors in on the planet. I kind of felt like this was symbolic of the fact of the reversal of the captivity. All the people on the beach were white people. And so when this tanker comes, just imagine how many slaves, if you're going into captivity and you're going to be taken away in captivity, the same way that you brought people to this country in captivity, I, I felt like that was symbolic of what is going to happen now that 400 years are up. And the people in the movie understand spiritually what's getting ready to happen naturally, although the people who are going to be the victims, the descendants of slaveholders and the beneficiaries, those who helped oppress us, don't really know and don't understand and don't care to understand. So I felt like this was kind of like a in your face, this is what's getting ready to happen to y'all. Y'all getting ready to be on these oil tankers. Ain't going to be filled with oil. They're going to be filled with people. And if you understand or remember or recall how they had Africans packed into those slave ships all sorts of ways. If you've ever seen any of the sketches of how they had, um, those poor people just laid, just stacked on top of each other like Jenga. I just can't explain it. It's like matchsticks in a matchbox. It's just like every inch of space they could use to store people and lay them any kind of way on top of each other. They didn't have restrooms. They defecated on each other. They were sick, vomiting from the voyage because many of those people had never been on a ship. A lot of them, perished, and there was just lots of terrible things happening. And so when you look at that big oil tanker and you consider there are, 300 million people in America, the majority of the people in America are white people. So you're going to need big ships to get all of them away from here, those that survive and go to captivity wherever they are going. And so that was my takeaway. So I don't want to harp on that too much, but I just want to share that's my thought about the fact that they used the name White Lion. There was a big oil tanker coming up, and they talked about this harbor. Um, they're going to leave from the harbor that they love the most. They love to talk about the Statue of Liberty, and that harbor represents freedom, yada, yada, yada. Well, it's going to represent captivity for them. So there's going to be a reversal of what it is supposed to mean. Moving on. Um, People were running around and recording the darn tanker running around like dummies. People are going to be doing that same thing like dummies when anything happens that they should be fleeing from. So it just also highlighted how stupid people have become today. Um, One of the things that I remember is that the navigation systems, the guy at the beachfront park, when he was getting everybody out of the park after the tanker ran aground, He said there were no navigation systems fail all up and down the East Coast. And that is significant because if that is true, that means what happened in that movie in New York would be happening all up and down the East Coast. So there would be ships running aground everywhere when this happens because there won't be any navigation. And so that means if there were supplies or anything coming or anywhere, once the navigation system goes, ships won't know where to go, because everybody's accustomed to GPS now. So that's going to be extremely problematic. And so if you live on the coast and you live close to a port or a beach or whatever, that's food for thought. Throughout the movie, the deer and the animals were always trying to tell the people stuff. So, I'm a big outdoors person, and I do believe that animals do try to warn us. And throughout this movie, you could hear birds loud. If you watch it again, you'll hear at different times crickets. You'll hear birds. Then you'll see the deer like coming in slowly but surely, like they were running away from wherever they were, um, close to the city, or if they just know something and they're trying to go to some place where it's going to be safe, and they're trying to warn the people that, hey, something is wrong, the frequency, something is happening. So we have to make sure that we pay attention to the animals. The Friends episode that the little girl watched was titled The Last One. And, I've been saying this is the last government system, this last infrastructure, this last. This, to me, was symbolic of what's to come, but it will be the final, whatever it is. Whatever happens is going to be final. And so I think that was significant. I don't think that was chosen by accident. Nothing in this movie is accidental. The parents play Jenga, and from my understanding, the Jenga is about continually growing or moving or progressing upward, despite challenges, being able to remain stable and I guess strong. I may not have that exactly right, but Jenga is symbolic of what we should be trying to do, being resilient as these storms come. And only the smart people will survive. Everybody's not going to be able to um, be resilient. So that's something that we need to think about. Um, the husband in the movie had on a shirt that said Bikini Kill. And I don't know what that means. So if anybody knows what that means, but the record player on the shirt looks like an eye, all-seeing eye. And in one particular scene, his shirt was in front of a backdrop of a picture with a bunch of eyes. And so the fact that the house belonged to somebody who worked in cybersecurity, it made me feel like they were always being watched. And then also, I also felt like it was a um, ode to the Illuminati with that eye. So if you go back and look at that picture, when the black guy knocked on the door and they opened the door and they were standing in front of this picture on the wall behind the husband, there's a picture of a bunch of eyes on the wall. So, and it looked like it blended in with his shirt. So I don't think that was accidental either. Let's see. The what was interesting was the interaction of Julia Roberts with the black guy, Mahershala Ali, who was the owner of the house, how she was very judgmental and didn't think that they owned the house. And the husband was really nice and just gracious and kind hearted and unexpectedly trusting. And when the wife was not. And again, going back to the order where the husband wasn't really trying to protect the family, the wife was more suspicious and trying to protect and trying to let him lead, but he wasn't actually doing a great job. That was one of the takeaways from this movie. Is like the men in this movie were weak and not. No one. I won't necessarily say. I will. Yeah, I would say Mahershala Ali, his character, was also weak in the fact that he allowed those people to stay in his house, sleep in his bed, made him sleep in his basement. He running around, taking them to go see about their kids while leaving his daughter abandoned. Like that was just some really not Israelite stuff to be doing, and it was real bad. Um, there was a map on the wall, and the map was split into four regions, and it was green and black. Don't know what that meant, and I didn't really take the time to stop it and try to blow it up. But if you know or have any idea what that green and black map was on the wall down in the basement where the daughter slept in the bed, please let me know because I have no idea what that meant. Um, CNN, for whatever reason, CNN was chosen to bring the news about what actually was happening. They were able to break through the national emergency declaration siren thing that was blaring on the TV. And so they were showing a map of the cyber attacks that had occurred across the country. And I just found it interesting that they chose CNN and they had that map. That's not the first time I've seen that map. I would just say that. So if you watch the movie again, pay attention to that map. Another thing in this movie is that the girl, the daughter, Rose, had anxiety over not having technology. She woke up her mom and she wanted her mom to come see about the TV. She got the dad up, but this goes to the fact that a lot of people are not going to be prepared for when there's no power, there's no communications. Now, they had power in this house. And that was something else that I kept noticing that Julia Roberts, even though the man said there was a blackout, she did not trust that the homeowner was telling the truth because they had power at his house. She doesn't know if he had a backup generator. She doesn't know anything because none of that was ever discussed in the movie. It's just that they lived outside of the city limits and they seemingly had plenty for not only he and his daughter, but for guests that stayed for, I don't know, I guess 2 days while this stuff happened. The blackout and the subsequent taking over of the city by whoever was taking over and whoever was dropping bombs. Um, there were in the I guess in the main character's bedroom in the guest house or in the Airbnb home that they had rented. On the wall, the water kept changing and getting rougher as the scenes in the movie became more intense. So the water intensity, the pictures, water intensity, and were changing throughout the movie. And so I took that as things are going to get rougher as time goes on, real fast though, because this movie seemed as though it was like a weekend. So all this stuff happened in a matter of 2 days. So can you imagine 72 hours, 24, 36, 24, yeah, 24, 36. Yeah, so just not a long time for chaos to ensue. Um, there was a scene after they slept in that house. The next morning, they woke up, and if you listen, you'll hear the birds were chirping really loud. It was the only time in the movie I heard the birds chirping loud, and I'm a bird person, so anytime I hear birds chirping like that, I just stop and look at the sky or try to figure out like what's happening. Sometimes it's the frequency, I may hear some ringing in my ears or something, but definitely there is there was something going on because the birds were picking it up, and they were really loud in that movie the next morning after they woke up the first night in that house. Um, there was a number 101 on the television, and I don't know what 101 means. So if anybody has any idea, please drop a comment in the comment section. I don't know the significance of 101. Also, 96 was tattooed on the homeowner's daughter's arm. And so I don't know the significance of 96 either. So I wrote those two numbers down. I'm sure they mean something, but I don't know what they mean. Um, there was I made a note about the cyber attack. So it says attack impacts animal migration patterns because I guess of the frequencies or whatever. So I don't know if it's a cyber attack or if it's solar flares, but in any event, something it is going to change the way that the animals migrate, which will be a problem, especially if you are in the SHTF. They don't get the power grid back up, and you have to try to live off the land for an extended period of time. The fewer animals there are because of the migration patterns, it means the less food you have in your area to consume. So keep that in mind. They made it a point to mention that in the movie, so I felt like that was something important that we need to know. Um, the boy had on a obey shirt with panda eyes, and the girl had on a NASA t-shirt. And I don't know. I know what the boy's shirt meant, but I don't know what the girl's shirt meant. Why NASA? Is this have something to do with Space Force? Does it have something to do with aliens? Folks gonna be leaving on a spaceship? Like what's happening? I don't know. But the fact that NASA obey NASA were side by side on two T-shirts in the same scene is significant. So I don't know if they want us to obey NASA. Um, the dad, when he left the house to go try to find a newspaper and find out what was happening, he couldn't do anything because he was so accustomed to relying on the GPS, he did not process in his memory how to get into and out of that place. And so he couldn't find anything because he didn't have GPS in his car. And the GPS didn't work because he didn't have phone service. So to me, this means you need to have atlases in your car, like hard copy atlases and maps, so that you will know how to get from point A to point B in the event there is an SHTF event. Uh, they there were flyers that dropped from the sky that the sun in the movie um, noted said "Death to America." Uh, so I don't know what that means. In the movie, towards the end, the prepper guy said that there were a couple of different types of propaganda leaflets being dropped, and because America had made so many enemies, didn't really know who was doing what, and it could be a coordinated attack where, like, I guess different enemies took over different regions of the nation and dropped their leaflets wherever they were engaged in conflict. So it was in there. So I felt like it was important. I needed to mention it. Um, there were frequency noises throughout the movie a couple of times, and this boy got the son in the movie, he got bitten by a bug which made him sick. The frequency made his teeth come out, and so I don't know if the illness from the bug bite coinciding with the frequency had anything to do with it, because he was the only one that lost teeth. But I guess maybe because his immune system was compromised, he had been having a fever, just had a lot of stuff going on. So my takeaway for that was that you should have first aid, bug stuff, medications to take care of anything that goes on with you. Definitely something to fight fever, and definitely something for antibiotics. Definitely antibiotics to fight off any type of virus or bacteria that may come from bug bites. So I don't even know what kind of bug it was, but they were just walking around like it was okay in the woods, not worried about ticks or fleas or nothing. So no telling. And then there's no telling if that was some type of genetically modified something. You just never know. All right. Um, Another thing about this movie was when the dad went out to go get help, he saw this Spanish speaking woman walking on the side of the road, and she looked like she was distraught, and I couldn't understand what she was saying because I don't really speak fluent Spanish. Looked like she was trying to explain something about her house or something, something, something. And the guy, the husband in the movie, the white husband, he could not understand her. And it was the first time in the movie where he literally like felt threatened by a woman, not a man, by a woman, because she was panicked. She sensed that he was getting ready to drive off. As if you look at the movie, there are hardly no cars on the road, and that probably was going to be her only chance to get someplace. But because they couldn't communicate, um, she couldn't tell him what was wrong, and he could not help her. And that was the first time in the movie he really kind of it sunk in that doing the right thing was no longer the right thing to do, because things were different. And so that was a theme throughout the movie. Doing the right thing in times of crisis may not be the best thing for you. And so that's what I took away. It's like you can be a good person until the poop hits the fan, but after that, you better put on your lion of Judah hat and protect what's yours, protect your family, protect your pride, protect your property. And the right thing to do is that, and not worry about other people, because other people will get you jammed up into some stuff. Inability to move. When this thing happened in this movie, there were a bunch of Tesla cars that were piling up on the highway. Cars stopped working, so people didn't couldn't get into or out of the city. Which is why if you can leave now, you should leave on your own. You don't want to be trying to figure out how you're going to get out if something happens. Um, Planes were crashing. Planes were falling out of the sky because the navigation didn't work. And I don't know if it was on the East Coast and on the West Coast, but definitely in New York, there was a place where just planes, I guess it was really close to two of the airports, maybe LaGuardia and JFK, but planes were crashing, and there had been a number of planes crashing, and you could see dead people and scattered debris and, you know, stuff all over the beach away from the city where the planes had crashed. So stay off them airplanes, stay off them unfriendly skies. Um, Brand new Teslas. I did a video um, yesterday about the Tesla recall. So in this movie, people who had Teslas, the cars were empty. They basically were put on autopilot. I guess they were hacked, put on autopilot, and sent to drive to this place close to this community and clog up the roads, both lanes, so that you could not get into or out of the city because the Tesla cars were just crashed, just stacked up. And so that's pretty scary. If you have a car like that, it can be hacked and you could find yourself without transportation to leave. Um, if you're in the car, it could be hacked and you could be stuck in there driving at a high rate of speed and can't get out. So that scene to me was like, ooh, I know I don't want no. Mm-mm. They can have them cars. I don't want them. That self-driving crap. Mm-mm. Um, and the roads were littered with cars. All the highways were just littered with cars. So if you think that you're going to be going someplace when this happens, it looks as though because so many people have modern cars, those cars will stop working if there is a Carrington event or EMP strike or whatever, and you're not going to be able to move. Wherever the car stopped, that's where you're going to be stuck. So you should keep a go bag in your car. You shouldn't travel that far away from home. You should get in shape so that you can walk or jog if you need to get home. And if you're far away from home, then you should have things in your go bag where you can sleep where you need to on your journey and be safe. I've been talking about just the lack of order with the men in the movie, and I kind of touched on that yesterday on the social piece. So I don't want to really go into it, but I did just make a note of how disorderly the men were when it came to leading. Um, I want to talk about the perversion in this movie, like the interracial themes is like they don't miss an opportunity to do that. And so the white young boy was looking at the black young lady's butt and stuff in the bikini, taking pictures and trying to jerk off to it. The husband was feeling frisky with the sister girl in the movie because the wife is so mean and cruel and neglectful, and so they didn't really have an intimate life, which left the door open for him to look at other women in a different way. The same with Julia Roberts' character and Mahershala Ali. They were dancing to this song called "Too Close," another black song that back from back in the day we used to listen to in the club, but it's very provocative. And the fact that they chose that movie in that song, "Getting Too Close," um, I can feel a poke coming through on you, and they're hugging, and just they had to slip that in where the black man got to be lusting after the white woman, and she got to be twirling around, and just they don't miss an opportunity to put the swirl in. So gotta keep them alive. Gotta help Esau and them live. They need our blood and our sperm and our eggs. Um, the overarching theme for me with this movie is white folks will cleave to us and white folks will need black people to survive. Even with the new movie Civil War, like there's a black man and he's telling people what to do. He's everywhere. I don't know why white people won't listen to us now, but um, we're gonna be fresh out of talking when SHTF comes and helping for a lot of those people. So um, the movie basically, to me, spoke on the fact that they can't survive without us, and so we need to pay attention to that. Um, and black folks will, and they know that black folks will have resources to survive in addition to the white prepping community, people who prep in general, but there's a reliance on black people to share with them and to give to them. One of the things in the movie that I talked about yesterday was that the sister in the movie was like, we shouldn't be trusting them, we need to get them out of our house, You know how mom felt, and daddy agreed, but he still didn't do it. And so, I think that was a message to Black people, almost kind of like a release of responsibility for caring for white people, because for so long we've had to carry them, care for them and their children, worry about them. They call on us to come save them, and then they don't do the same thing in return. And so this is our chance to be released. And I think this movie was giving us game on how it's going to go down. Like we already know, but I just think this was a big call out. Um, there was a lot of undertones of racism in this movie with the wife. Not so much with the husband, but or the children. Definitely the wife, though. Though she was very untrusting. Um, One of the things that I remember from this movie was Mahershala Ali was talking about the black guy who owned the house. He was telling a story about his client, and his client knew what was coming. He was very rich, knew what was going on, met with the global elites once per year, at the little winter solstice. But he said he met with him. He thought he was cool. He told him about what was happening, and then what could potentially happen, and about this particular line item in a budget when it came to destabilizing a nation. And then he's talked about one day this man just called him out of the blue, and I'm assuming that this cybersecurity guy also worked with money. And he said he had to move around a whole bunch of money, and told him that he hoped things works out for him. And he said he was going away for a while. Didn't say where he was going, didn't say why. But the black guy remembered that this guy had told him the story and gave him a heads up about what was going on. But at that moment, when he was moving his money and telling him he was leaving for a while, he didn't give the man who was in charge of his money a heads up and tell him, you need to move, you need to get out of town, you need to leave the city. He didn't tell him anything, but he hopes that things work out for him, as if to say, I hope you make it. So, you know, we have to take the little grains of salt that the enemy gives us, and we have to use those things wisely. And this our people will not care about us. This black guy works in around a bunch of rich people, but they didn't care to tell him to protect himself. They were just like, we hope you make, the guy was like, we hope you make it out. And even though he was rich, he wasn't rich as the richest man on earth, or wasn't rich as the rich people he was working for, but he was well off. But they also didn't offer him any assistance. So this is why we have to keep watch. This is why we must keep an eye out on, the things that people are telling us, because they're not going to give us any warning. And I've been saying this for the last couple of years. When things go down, it's going to happen all of a sudden, quickly, and you ain't going to have no warning. But you will know what's going on because you have been taught here and in other places about what is to come. So we won't be surprised. We'll be prepared. And then we can go into our hiding places and pray that we are found worthy to escape what's coming. All right. I have so many more of these things, and I'm gonna try to go through and pick out the best ones. Conspiracy theory was used in this movie, and I found it interesting. I actually felt vindicated, because the conspiracy theorists were vindicated and basically told, you said in the movie, that they were right. So all the people who think that we're crazy, they're the ones who are crazy, because they don't believe, and they've been conditioned to believe lies. Um, they said, the black guy in the movie said that the powerful people get a heads up And I took away from that the smart and the poor people pay attention to see the you pay attention to the movements of the powerful people, not rich but powerful people, so that we understand what's going on and we can go back and tell our people. Um, I made a note about Julia Roberts kept flicking the lights on and off because there's a black because there may be a blackout in one area, there may not be a blackout where you are. So um, that was reassuring that everybody's not going to be experiencing blackout, just major metropolitan areas. And the girl kept asking about the power plant. Is there a power plant in so and so and so 10 Mile Island? Whatever she said. So there's definitely going to be challenges with the power, but everybody's not going to be without power. So that is kind of some good news, I guess. Um, the little girl Rose kept watching old television shows. She was obsessed with old television shows that tell you what the future is going to be like. And she was the only one in her family that was obsessed with it, and nobody else paid any attention to her. And she was always trying to warn them about stuff, and she finally just like nobody listens to her. And the brother even acknowledged, yeah, you're right. So in the end, she ended up having the last laugh though, because she found the bunker and had all the food, and she just left them. She just was like, I'm gonna go ahead and live my best life now. Um, the daughter Rose also, when the brother was getting sick, and the mom was in the bed with she and the brother, she told this story about a movie where a man died because he refused to be saved, and he kept watching people give him reports about what was coming, and he did nothing. And then, even when help came, he didn't do anything. He finally died, and was mad at God because God didn't save him. And it's like God was like, I done sent you everything, but a burning bush, and you still didn't take advantage of it. So another thing about Rose, the little girl in the movie, was that she was done waiting. Um, and so I took that as faith without works is dead. Like you can have faith and you can wait on something to happen, or you can prepare and do work, and you will have what you need when something happens. And so that's kind of um, my takeaway. She's seen enough signs and she believed that something was going to happen. And so she didn't care what the rest of her family did. She was going to save herself. And essentially, that's what she did. She knew she was with a bunch of idiots. Basically, that's how I felt. Um, and I felt like she was tired of being around her ignorant family. Even though she was young, I just felt like she was very tired of them, especially her mom. In the movie, another thing that they mentioned is that trust should not be doled out lightly, especially to white people in SHTF. Now, I wrote that down. So that's self explanatory. Moving on. Um, right thing to do will screw you in the end. That's also what I wrote down. Takeaway. Um, you're not going to be able to do the right thing because people ain't going to be right. So you can't do right. I know that probably didn't make sense to folks who are not country, but it makes perfectly good sense to me. Moving on. There was a scene where there was an eclipse in the movie. There's going to be an eclipse next year. And there was a scene where the flag was on the moon and it was all dirty and tattered. So I don't know if something's going to happen between the time of this eclipse. Around the time of this eclipse, it's a huge year. It's a jubilee year. A lot of things are happening next year. So, the powers that be believe in rituals and signs and symbols and things. So, pay attention. Um, Now, I don't know about this one, but this was my interpretation. So I felt like the daughter knew that her family was going to perish, which is why she left them. And I felt like she knew the black people were going to be either they probably were going to perish, or they would either be okay because they get sick of the mama and daddy and run them off. But one of the things that I took away was that the white people in the movie brought disease and illness. They didn't have anything. And no one else in the movie was sick except for that family, the least prepared family. And so it kind of to me spoke to the curses of how the mother's attitude, basically brought curses on the entire family. So I could be wrong, but that's what it looked like to me. It just looked like judgment. Mom was rude and racist and screwing around with Yah's chosen people, and so he, continued to cause trouble for her and her family, and she just wasn't getting it. Um, Family members will turn and have emotional or physical affairs during these rough times. That was a takeaway. I don't know if it's the Esau now or anybody and everybody, but that was my takeaway. The cleanliness of the white people in the movie was questioned. You remember the girl and Julia Roberts had the daughter, and Julia Roberts had the black daughter. I'm sorry, Mahershala Ali's daughter in the movie, and Julia Roberts were having a discussion about the pool, and she was like she didn't want to get in because she didn't know if the lady's kids had peed in it, and she was like, how dare you? And um, there were just some other instances where they weren't as civilized as Julia Roberts tried to make them out to be. And the black girl was trying to check her on it, and she wasn't having none of it. I noted that the black man left his family to save the white family, which is completely out of order. Left his daughter alone after he figured that the mom was not going to come back to save this white son of the white guests who were in his house. So that was very interesting. Um, I noticed that the white lady didn't have any compassion for the black girl. She couldn't even bring herself to hug her after the girl disclosed that her mom was probably dead and died in a plane crash and she would never see her again. The dad was gone, and she was like, "Do you realize that I'm all alone?" And yada, yada, yada. Even though she was an adult, Julia Roberts could not find it in herself to see that young lady as a child. And she just had so much animosity towards her. In that moment, it just reminded me of why you being with Esau now may not be the best thing for you, for us, our people. We're not supposed to be around them anyway. So hopefully you've positioned yourselves to only be around Gentiles, people who are converted and who will follow, because that's what they're supposed to be doing, following, who are respectful and who understand they're supposed to be in captivity right now. So they don't have any business mistreating us anymore. But some of them going to do it. till they get on the ships. Um, One of the most powerful scenes was in that little shed where the black daughter and Julia Roberts were having this conversation, and she basically said that white folks done destroyed the whole earth and they lie about it to cover it up, and admitted that we are living a lie and call it mass delusion. Um, so that was reassuring that they know what they've done, but they're gonna lie to us till the battle of Megiddo, or whatever you want to call it. See who's gonna rule the earth. We already know who's gonna win. Um, there was a line in the movie that said Russia recalled their staff, which was a sign of what was coming, sign of coming war that people missed. That was my note. I'm sorry, my handwriting is terrible. So back in 2022, for real, Russia recalled their embassy staffs and the ambassadors to leave America. Some of them were expelled, but um, this happened in 2022. So if there's anything happening, it's highly possible. Uh, Another thing that I took away from this movie was there are no such things. There will be no friends during SHTF. You're either gonna have your family, and everybody else that's not your family outside of your house will be considered an enemy, even if it's people that you've known for a long time. So the guy who was a prepper had done work for the black homeowner, but when the SHTF scenario came about, he didn't care if he knew that guy or not. He wasn't giving up nothing because he know once you start giving, those people would just be back all the time, and so he had to basically protect his family and what he had. So the takeaway is ain't gonna be no friends. And I was thankful for that because you get to kind of see how people act and react. Um, the last thing that I will mention is that how the white guy acknowledged that he was useless without his technology, and the rural guy who maybe didn't have a college degree, was a manual laborer, was prepared. And so to me, that was like, don't judge a book by its cover. Um, your degrees and your good city job will not help you during the SHTF. And that people who over rely, too much on technology are going to be a disadvantage to you. Um, TikTok brains, that's basically TikTok brain people are going to be undone in SHTF. Um, the last thing that I want to mention is how they talk about the different scenarios. And the first one was isolation to make people deaf and dumb, and I don't know what in the world, impressionable. I don't know what I was trying to write, but we're in that phase now. And over the last couple of years, you've seen it. It's really been going on since like 2008, but it really got bad in 2016. So from 2016 to now, we have been in a state of isolation. They've been dividing us up so that they can easily conquer us, or we can conquer ourselves. And so the takeaway is there are lots of signs and symbols in this movie. I recommend you watch it again and then you apply them to your life. You sit and meditate on those things because they're telling you what's coming, just like they did in 2018, 2000, between 2016 and 2020. They were telling us what was coming. We just thought we were watching movies, but we were actually watching the future. They were telegraphing, forecasting what's coming. Same thing now. We don't know when, but you need to remember this movie. I don't think it's an accident. We've been talking about all these things all year long, and I've been talking about them since 2016, 2020, about things to come. And so we must be at the point where they're ready to accelerate the agenda. And so you just need to be ready. So keep prepping, keep praying, keep seeking the Most High, keep repenting daily for sins of commission and sins of omission, keep keeping the Sabbath, stay in your word, and make sure you have good people around you. Even if you have no good people around you, have at least one good solid person who's going to be a ride or die, because folks are gonna flake on you, even people in your family. So, that's what this movie showed. And I just want to do some of the signs and symbols that I saw in this movie so that we can be prepared for what's to come. All right, please like this video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell notification so that you'll be notified each and every time I upload new content. I will not be doing any more reviews of this movie, so you don't have to worry about seeing this anymore. Um, Thank you for staying around to the end. Follow me on Instagram, uh, Facebook, Rumble, and Odyssey. In the event that this channel goes down, I will be using those platforms to communicate with you. And lastly, if you like this type of content and you'd like to contribute to the channel, contribution links are in the description. This is Marley K, and we in trouble, y'all. So keep praying and crying out to the Most High, the Creator. All right, I'm out.